Hey guys, welcome to this webinar. You're hearing my voice. If you're on your phone, my name is Salvador Brigman. I run the blog crowdcrux.com, and Dana from Deposit a Gift has been amazing, an amazing supporter of the blog, and she actually agreed to do this webinar free of charge for my community. We're going to be talking everything about mastering nonprofit crowdfunding and online fundraising. So I know there's a lot of general advice out there on the web, but really, we're going to go through a lot of key tactics, things that you can actually implement and that you can use to raise money for the crowd. So this is if you're trying to really if you're trying to launch a new nonprofit venture, I think this is going to be a lot of great, valuable material for you. Or just a nonprofit related crowdfunding campaign, or trying to do something online related, maybe even raising money for your personal cause. I think this is going to be a lot of good, actionable material. So I'm really excited to get to it. We're going to get to that in just a second. But I want to thank you so much for tuning into this broadcast. It will be live. We're going to also provide the YouTube video for it and also the slides we're going to provide for you guys if you stick around. So thank you so much for tuning in. And I'm going to introduce you right now to Dana of depositagift.com.
Thanks, Sal. Hi, everyone. We are so happy to be back working with the Crowdcrux community. Sal's awesome. We did a webinar together last year that was super successful. And so I think we're about on our 1-year anniversary, and we decided to put our heads together on some new information. And one thing that Sal has shared with me is that increasingly he's getting questions about nonprofit, organizational, charitable, school, startup, nonprofit fundraising, which is a huge, huge pat on the back to him because, as many of you know, he started off really being rewards-based campaign kind of fundraising, but he's become a real expert in what does it take to run a successful campaign. And so he gets questions all the time about how do you do it from a excuse me, from a nonprofit and charitable perspective, which is why he came to us. Deposit a Gift is a platform that you can use to raise money for anything, and we have a real sweet spot with small to medium-sized nonprofits, schools, religious organizations, as well as, personal types of campaigns. And so what we are really passionate about here is educating people on what it takes to make a campaign go. More than half of campaigns actually don't hit their goals. And the reason for that is that people just really don't understand what it takes to give a campaign the momentum it needs to blast off. And so today we've prepared for you a workshop that really gets down and dirty. I am not a fan of workshops that are fluffy, where you leave an hour later and you're like, what was that? And why did I just, lose an hour of my life? So you should get more than enough information that's actually actionable. And I will almost give it a caveat that sometimes we get feedback that it's almost too much information. It's really hard to know what to parse out because everyone is so hungry to know how to do this right. So a couple of things. One, I always like to say that the landscape for fundraising has fundamentally shifted, and it's actually been affected by two things. One, just e-commerce, right? What people expect in terms of a transaction is actually affecting the charitable world of fundraising, right? Because people want a fast, easy, and fun way to give. And then the for-profit world of crowdfunding, right? Like the Kickstarters of the world, because people are so used to getting asked to support things in this new fandangled way, that translates to the charitable world. And no longer are people okay with you asking them to give through their PayPal page or through some sort of sterile transactional donation page that is clunky and isn't social in any way. And so the cool thing to note actually is that the charitable world of crowdfunding is the fastest growing vertical. So you guys are all really in the right place. It's the fastest growing vertical. It's being impacted by the for-profit world in terms of consumer expectations. And what we're trying to do is really help the charitable world sort of blend those two things to learn how they can essentially compete in that space and run successful campaigns. Sal and I had a vision to have this be as interactive as possible, not being in a room together. And really, we would like to be able to answer your questions. So we're going to try and take some breaks Sal is going to be the trustee monitor of questions. If you look to your left, underneath all of your names, there is a chat box where you can actually put questions. Sal's going to be monitoring that, and we'll try and take 1 or 2 breaks. We'll see how things go and answer a few curated questions, and then hopefully we'll have some time at the end to ask some more. We might even be able to turn on the hand raiser tool for people to ask with their voice and dialogue. We'll see how that goes. Reminder that this is being recorded. And after the webinar renders and we get that recording, I will follow up with you and I will send you the slides and I will send you the recording. So not to worry, you will have that. And also, if you stick around, we are going to have a special free upgrade code that we made for the CrowdCrux community that we will tell you about. Take note of my email address there at the bottom. If you do not have an email from me by tomorrow, check your spam folder. I will have sent it by then. And if you definitely don't have something, then please write to me. Don't hesitate. One of the things that I like about doing these webinars is it really brings us close together. We're going to give you a ton of good information, but then after the fact, you can feel free to consider me, a resource to you in your crowdfunding journey and ask any specific questions about the kind of campaign that you'd like to do. At Deposit Gift, we offer really hands-on customer service. So we even offer you a cheat sheet to make setup really easy and tons of marketing toolkits to guide you in the process. And so with that, I think we waited long enough to let enough people join us and also give you guys a nice foundation for what we're going to do. And we're going to dive right in. For some reason, I have a little bit of a frog in my throat. So I think we have already set this premise pretty clearly. This webinar is meant to be actionable for you to really walk away with the know-how to launch a campaign tomorrow. All right. You're all here today because you're passionate about something. And the neat thing about crowdfunding is that it is a tool to raise money for the things that matter most to you. And really, it can be done for almost any vertical that you care about, as long as you come up with that emotional hook and that story that's going to drive a sense of urgency. One really important premise to start out with: you can't just put it up and pray. Now, I know this might sound a little bit cheeky, but I can tell you with the statistics of, more than half of all crowdfunding campaigns across platform, it doesn't matter what platform you're looking at, not meeting their goals. What this tells us is that even if you're sitting there going, duh, Dana, I know the internet's not going to give me money, right? I can tell you most people act in a way that makes it seem that they think that. Right? It takes away the initiative when you think that, oh, all I have to do is maybe work hard on getting the right picture or video or story and get the campaign up. And then I'm going to post it, I'm going to publish it, and it's going to drive itself. Okay? I want to start with the premise that that is not how it works. Okay? It is really frustrating to me when I see stories in the media where, campaign organizers get interviewed and they'll say things like, I don't know what happened. I just, went to bed and I woke up in the morning and I had $100,000 and I didn't do anything, right? Most of the time they're actually lying, right? It's not true. It is very, very unusual for a campaign to strike a chord with people on an emotional or gut level that it actually propels itself. And most campaigns that actually do appear to do so, the campaign organizer did a lot of work up front to make sure that they made their thermometer rise a good 20 or 30% before it really hit the public market. And we're going to talk a lot about what are these marketing strategies and tactics that you need to implement so that you too can have that type of success. So, the neat thing about crowdfunding is that it's very low cost, right? You all are on here. I'm sure you know how it works. It's pay as you go. You pay a percentage of what you raise. The investment is in your elbow grease, right? The investment is in how you cultivate a network and how you power that network, okay? And these things do not happen by magic. I always like to say that it's like a good manicure. It's all in the prep, or for those of you who don't like manicures or don't get them, I actually hate getting my nails done, right? You can compare it to painting a wall. Right? The preparation when you're sitting there and the manicurist is, primping and scraping your nail, and she spends a half an hour on that. When she actually goes to paint your nail, it's like 30 seconds, right? But if she didn't do a good job in preparing your nail and making sure everything was perfect, the manicure looks like garbage. And you could say the same thing for painting a wall. The preparation period is what matters. And so we're really going to give you a lot of the tools to do that up front. And I can tell you that everyone thinks that they are so prepared and so well planned, and most people are not. And when I do a postmortem with them, because like I said, we offer really high touch customer service at Deposit a Gift. So we talk to you guys a lot, we interface, and we want to learn from you what's working and what's not so we can be most useful. More often than not, the feedback is, okay, you told us we should really create an online street team. Well, I only got like 2 people who said they would help me. You told me we should make sure we did a soft launch and created a frenzy for 24 hours and, raised 20%. Well, we didn't really do that, or people didn't understand what we were asking, and we didn't take the time to explain why it mattered. Those are the things that we're talking about, okay? So let's get started and talk about what the keys to a potentially great campaign are. So what I like to say is that successful campaigns have 4 things in common. So number 1, they state their goals and purpose clearly. So you need to be clear on the mission of your campaign. What are you raising money for? And you need to be able to articulate that in like 2 sentences. You need to explain why your cause is important and how you plan to use the money. The reason is because you want to set yourself up to report back on impact. Okay, right now it seems like retention and just community cultivation seems to be a hot topic these days. And I attended a couple of workshops myself in the last week or 2, and they're talking a lot about retention and, why people don't give or why they don't give again. And of the top 10 reasons of this, recent analysis, the 3 of them were some version of the donor saying they didn't feel appreciated, they weren't thanked, and they didn't feel like their donation actually mattered. Now, the neat thing about crowdfunding is what you're setting up is a very mission-specific campaign. And when you do that, it gives you a reasonable way to go back to people timely moments throughout the campaign and let them know how it's going. Or when it's over, what did that money do? Because you're going to have to go back to them again, most likely, whether it's for another campaign for your organization or, people are people and we just always need each other, right? You don't want to leave people hanging. And you might say, well, I'm a polite person. I always say thank you. People are terrible at gratitude in these campaigns. And so number 4 here, actually, and I'll go back to the marketing roadmap, critical to a successful campaign is actually having what I call an appreciation strategy. Since we are having a workshop here that is targeted to organizations, charities, and nonprofits, I can address the fact that most organizations have a different approach to gratitude. In fact, they don't call it gratitude, they call it acknowledgement. And they do it at the end of a campaign, right? And they treat it like a project management tool that they just have to get the person their tax ID at the end. And you're going to totally shift your thinking that you're going to be using gratitude as an excuse to get in front of people and continue cultivating that relationship. And so it is something immediate. And then the other thing that successful campaigns have in common is a marketing roadmap. And it's not a marketing roadmap that is on paper. I mean, in your head, it's actually on paper. We're going to encourage you to think through how you're going to get from point A to point B. Now, for most people, that's not necessarily intuitive, right? You're a person with a good idea. You're a person with development skills. You're a person who's passionate about a particular cause, but you really aren't trained in marketing. And that's what we're going to focus on a lot today is teaching you those particular skills, because now more than ever, fundraising and marketing are not separate entities. They are one. Okay. And so to have a successful campaign, one of the most important things is actually to define your metrics for success up front, because crowdfunding is nothing if not about marketing. And it's actually would be a huge lost opportunity if you didn't think about it in these terms. I'm trying to raise money, and what else? What else can I accomplish? Am I trying to engage new donors? Is this a brand awareness campaign? Am I launching my nonprofit? Am I celebrating the fact that we just got our 501c3? Is this a PR stunt? think about what else you want to get out of this and use that to then plan your marketing plan, like to create it. It needs to inform it, right? You need to know where you're trying to go, and then you back into what those tactics will be. So common denominators of success, if you're not familiar with crowdfunding, which by the way, nobody should be embarrassed if they're not. I come to Sal's workshops with a little bit of a more advanced approach, just because I kind of figure if you know who he is and you know the site and you're a follower, you probably know the basics of crowdfunding. Doesn't mean you've run a campaign, but at least you know what it is. I can't tell you how many workshops I give across the country where we'll do a poll to get people's experience, and like less than 5% of people even know what it is. Now, you might be rolling your eyes and saying, oh, those people are so out of it. But actually, those people might be your target audience who you want to donate. So you might know what it is, but they don't. So keep that in mind, that there's also, an educational process where you're trying to train your community of supporters to engage in the way that you want. This gives you a bird's eye view of what a crowdfunding campaign looks like, right? Key elements, the image or the video, the goal, the thermometer, the recent activity feed, the story that really can engage people. And so crowdfunding campaigns, if you do need to take these talking points back to your internal organization or your board, why are we doing this? So the platform itself, whether you use Deposit a Gift or you choose another platform, what we're giving you is a tool that makes it easy to give and easy to share. Right? And that's really important, because people just don't do things if they're not easy. And I think that's just human nature. It goes back to the beginning of time, but especially today, where we are just bombarded with so many different stimuli, it's really important to make people not jump through hoops. So the cool thing about crowdfunding is, we're offering you an all-in-one platform. So it's a template. You just have to fill in the information, add your media. You don't have to hook up a credit card processor, right? Everything is in one place. What are you bringing to a crowdfunding campaign? You're bringing the personality, that personal story, and the fun, right? And that's what can engage people. So when you think about what it boils down to have an effective campaign, I want you to think of the bottom 3 bullets, which is an engaging story with a specific goal, right? That emotional hook. Now, if you're doing a story about a campaign about a friend who has cancer, or, a Boston bombing victim or something like that, then the emotion is built in, right? And they're probably going to take off pretty quickly on their own. And that's why there's a lot of people who think mistakenly that these campaigns will just run themselves. Most campaigns are not that way. You actually have to really drill down and think about, what is that emotional story? How can I put a face on this campaign? What can I do to make people feel like they must give today and not tomorrow? An effective campaign also has a marketing plan, which I told you, but it's not just any marketing plan with strategies and tactics willy-nilly. You want it to be built to, and I chose these words very specifically, to create and leverage success, right? So obviously you want it to work. So that's the creating success, but also you want to think about the fact that it's going to be successful, and basically create your if-then strategies, which we will get to closer to the end, to help you leverage success, actually expect it to work, and then make sure you have a plan that if you, do run a donor match and you meet that goal within, 24 hours, what are you going to do to celebrate that, instead of not being ready if you do well? Like, more people are almost ready for things to not go well than they are ready for things to go well. And then they get overwhelmed by their success. So you actually have to plan for that. And really endemic to that thinking is having a prepared and strategic leader. And so you're going to hear me talk about preparation and planning over and over and over again in this workshop. I cannot underline that enough. So when I send you the slides, you want to make a little note to yourself that slide 10, this is almost like your checklist when you're setting up your site. Questions to ask yourself. Do I have engaging visuals? When it comes to doing a campaign for like a product, having a video, they say, is, extremely important. I know Sal's got statistics on why that, makes it go through the roof. But I will tell you that in the nonprofit world, and I was just at a conference last week talking about this, don't stress if you don't have a video. The video actually, it's really more having a visual. And if you do have a video, make sure like what is the frame that it's on that people are seeing right when they land on the page. Because really you've got 3 to 5 seconds to get their attention. A lot of people don't want to play a video, or they're sitting in their office and the noise makes them uncomfortable. But if a picture is branded with the name of the organization and the people being affected are staring straight back at them, it's very hard to ignore that. So just make sure you choose a really good visual. And even, video can be cool, or using video as an excuse to pop up in someone's inbox. Like you created a new video and you posted it to your page and it's new news that you can share. That can be a wonderful strategy too. Make sure that you have brief, well-organized text. Most people get really caught up in their own story and don't know how to tell it succinctly, and also have really poor grammar, poor writing skills, don't know how to use formatting to, simple things, bold, underline bullets, just to make things really easy to read. You have to remember, you literally have 3 to 5 seconds to get people's attention and make them stop. So you want it set up in such a way. And at the end of the day, when you look at it and you read that story and you share it with a second set of eyes, or at Deposit a Gift, we offer really high touch customer service. We are happy to look at your campaign for you and we'll give you feedback. If your campaign does not make me feel like I must give today and not tomorrow, then you've got work to do on this story. Sal, do you want to go over any questions at this moment before we get into what does it take to make a campaign go?
Yeah, that sounds awesome, actually. If anyone has a question, you guys can ask it in the chat here. I think it'd be great. I mean, you have Dana at your disposal. Like, this is incredible. I think also me. But if you would like to ask a question, you can just type it in the chat there, and we'll get to some of them now. Maybe go through 2 to 3 questions. But if not, I actually have a lot of really frequently asked questions that I get. So, for example, I would just want to ask, I'm curious about this, Dana. I'll get people saying, hey, I really want to launch a crowdfunding campaign, right? But I don't have any connections. I don't really have that huge friend base. I don't have 200 or 500 friends on Facebook. What should I do then? How should I, is crowdfunding then even for me?
Right, that's an awesome question. So crowdfunding is a tool to work your network. You do need to have a network. Now, there are those of you, listen, I'm a founder of a platform. I would love for you to all launch a campaign tomorrow, right? That would be awesome. But I also want the campaign to go well for you. And so I'm not going to be selfish and lie and tell you misinformation. What I'm going to tell you is there are those of you listening right now who could launch a campaign tomorrow or an hour from now because you have a wide network. You're someone who's good at networking. You give to others. I call it karmic networking, right? So there's reciprocity there. You're active in social media, which doesn't necessarily have to be the case. If you have an active, email following or distribution list, that could be just as effective, or blog following. But you've got that network there that is primed and ready to hear from you.
That's really great.
If you are someone who has not invested in their network, you may need to spend 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months cultivating. I mean, there may be people listening right now who want to do Giving Tuesday, right? Giving Tuesday is this annual day of giving that comes after Black Friday and Cyber Monday. And I think this year is going to be the 5th year. It's growing in popularity. It's basically a response to the commercialism of the holidays. Okay, that feels really far away. We're barely coming out of winter, and no one wants to think about, winter at the end of the year. But here's what I would tell you. A smart organization would start their roadmap to Giving Tuesday now. Because
very, very well said.
You want to really plan out your marketing communications so that you are giving to your community, right? Most people, actually, this happened on a workshop the other day. Somebody asked me, how do we do it so that people still want to hear from us? Like, they gave, and then you're telling us, Dana, that we should follow up all the time. And I think people misinterpret how they're supposed to do follow-up, and they end up following up by not giving. They just ask for things. Be a volunteer, give us money instead of adding value. So you really want to invest in creating a relationship.
There are also some really great questions that are now coming on the chat. I'd love it if you could just take a second to look at a few of the questions, and as you do and formulate an answer, I'll also provide some thoughts on that. First of all, when you're doing, let's just say, a personal or any kind of crowdfunding campaign, I think it's really crucial to reestablish the connections that you have with your friends, your family, and your fans. I mean, we're all busy nowadays. It's hard to keep up relationships, but really you're going to be relying on these relationships to help you in different ways, whether that's giving money, whether that's sharing your campaign, or even just liking it on Facebook. So reestablishing those relationships a bit before you launch is not going to make it seem like then, hey, like I haven't done anything for you in the last 6 months. Would you do this for me? You know, it's a little bit less awkward if you start to reestablish those relationships.
You got to be
the second one is with the nonprofit crowdfunding campaigns. If you're really trying to launch a nonprofit, I think it makes complete sense to find other people that really care about the same things you do. Maybe another nonprofit organization, maybe some kind of initiative, maybe a blogger or a vlogger of some kind. Find other people who care about the same story or about the same cause that you do. That being said, let's get to the questions here.
Yeah, no, and the way to do that, just to carry forward your point, is you can use things like LinkedIn groups or hashtags on Twitter and find like-minded people. So this whole idea of creating your network, it could be investing in your network and building that relationship. It could be you have no network and you have to build it. And it literally might start by going back to people you haven't talked to since high school and just saying hi. You don't say, oh, hi, and by the way, I'm going to do a crowdfunding campaign. You can't look like you want something. You got to be a good person in the universe, right? But then also you could be out there in social media making friends with other influencers, right? So that you have a relationship and then they want to do for you. So that's a really good point. All right, Marty from Connecticut wants to know the average amount raised with crowdfunding and that he knows there's a huge range and curious on the average. There is actually no main amount. I mean, I can tell you the average nonprofit donation is around $100. But, you know, the amount of money that you can raise is really variable. Do you have more on that?
Yeah, actually for Kickstarter, it's actually a lot lower. It depends on the category of the campaign. So what it is that you're actually raising money for. So like on a site like Kickstarter, it's going to be maybe $5,000 to $10,000. If it's more of a personal crowdfunding campaign, like a plead for medical expenses or helping out in some way, it's around $1,000, guys. It's really, if you're raising $5,000 for a personal campaign, you're actually well above the norm there. For nonprofits, this area really varies just because it's very new. But there are definitely people doing it. It also depends on just the caliber of the nonprofit, how long they've been around, and how their donor list there. So that right. Kind of varies on that front.
It is very, very variable. Somebody said, with creating a story, should we exaggerate our story or be honest? No, you got to be honest, right? Because remember, I'm telling you, you need to report back on impact. How are you going to report back if it's not true? So the truth is always the right thing.
The truth is definitely always the right thing, guys. But I do think it makes a lot of sense to be aware of how you're coming across, the language that you're using. So while you should always stay true, I myself will use words to maybe convey a certain emotional message. Or maybe talking in a different way to make the story appeal more compelling. I think that makes a lot of sense, but definitely don't lie in any way about your
story. So that's what we've been talking about. I think we're corroborating each other. It's about the positioning. You have to find the right angle. That's why what you write and how you write it matters, right? It also could be that at your organization, you're deciding between a couple of different projects, okay? Pick the one that's going to be most emotionally engaging. All right. Someone asked about encouraging offering a tax donation receipt. If you have that ability, certainly. Deposit a gift, we have a receipt customizer tool where you can actually insert your tax information into our actual receipt. And so that's great. But that doesn't get you off the hook from sending personal follow-up emails, but it will at least take care of that piece that you want. So let's see what else I think would help.
How can I just want to answer this one. How can I make a project that helps others, but create a profit at the same time without being a nonprofit organization. And this is actually a really big trend. This is, social entrepreneurship. While you're not just making money, you're also helping the world in some way. And to be honest, Kickstarter is a for-benefit corporation, meaning that they do put public good above their own sense of profit. So this is a growing trend. It comes down to your values, really, being very clear about those and what kind of impact you want to make in the world, and obviously having a sustainable business model, because otherwise you're not going to make someone want to buy from you just because you're willing to do good in the world. People are going to buy from you because you have a great product, or you have a great campaign, or you have the ability to execute on a mission or cause. Just keep that in mind.
I also would say that kind of campaign is, it's a little bit different than what we came to talk to. Right now we're not really talking about, Kickstarter type of entrepreneurial and creative projects. We're talking about charitable, nonprofit, do-gooder projects. What you're talking, this particular question is more of the entrepreneurial project where then you say, and I'm going to give X% to a charity. And that's just like corporate social responsibility messaging. It's not so much about nonprofit fundraising. All right. And then someone asked if you need to be a nonprofit to do a campaign like this. That actually is platform specific. So on our platform, you actually do not need to be a nonprofit. So we have nonprofits who use us, and we have groups that are just, charitable organizations or grassroots initiatives. For us, we don't care, but if you are a nonprofit, we'll recommend you include your tax information. There are other sites that you have to be a nonprofit. So that's part of reading the fine print to figure out which platform to go with. That would be right for you. All right. I think I'm going to jump ahead because there's a lot of information. Any campaign or question I didn't get to, guys, you can also email me at Dana@depositagift. Happy to.
I did think there was one really good question here just before we hopped ahead from Brian. And he said, our primary fundraiser is a race to support our animal rescue. Would it make sense to do a crowdfunding campaign for the race? When should you do a crowdfunding campaign? I think that's a good question.
That's a really good question. So, and it's actually in my sweet spot because we are the only crowdfunding platform that has a ticket sales functionality that feeds a thermometer. And one of the areas that I coach on a lot is helping nonprofits bridge the gap between traditional events and the online world. So to keep it super in a nutshell, and Brian, if you want it, I gave a webinar on this. Well, I've been doing it all quarter, so I've got a ton of recordings I can give you. What I find is that when organizations are doing an event, which traditional events are still popular and have a lot of rationale behind them and meaning, whether it's a race, whether it's a gala, whether it's a wine and cheese, whether it's a junior board event, what ends up happening typically is that you're so focused on registrations or selling tickets or whatever it might be that you end up limiting yourself. So by their very nature, in-person events can be limiting because you self-select and say, oh, well, I'm only going to invite who I think can attend, or I'm only going to invite who has deep pockets for my auction or whatever it might be. And so what we did is we added ticket sales and registrations to our platform so that you can change how you talk about it. Now you can market it to your entire list. And as an example, the way your board member might talk about it differently would be, sends an email to friends and family, this organization I've been so involved with over the years. You may have even heard me talk about this awesome race that I do for them every year. Well, I've never really been able to invite you to get involved, but this year I can. We're looking for more people to come and participate. And if you can come, click here to buy your ticket. And even if you can't, this year you can get involved and show your support in any way you can. Click here to make a donation. Now, the truth is they could have made a donation any year, but when you make it easy and it's one site, one link, one click, one goal, one thermometer, it totally changes the dynamic. So absolutely. Sal, are we good?
Yeah, we're good. Right. I think that was a great answer. Thanks, guys, for the questions. We're also going to have some more at the end there, so stick around. We also have a lot of great content coming up.
All right. I feel like we're on TV, like we're going to commercial and coming back. Okay, guys. So your site looks good. You got a concise story. It makes sense. Good visuals. What actually makes it go? Okay. I already told you the internet's not going to give you money. I want you to really keep in mind that I think it's so cool that crowdfunding is about, it's not just processing, it's marketing plus processing. This is a huge opportunity for you to be bigger, bolder with your message. Okay. And it's a platform for creativity to do lots of fun stuff. This visual is really just meant to reinforce that it is very important for you to put pen to paper and create a plan and have in mind how you're going to get from point A to point B. Okay, it's going to drive everything. You must have a plan. The reason is this. The purpose of your marketing plan is to move people along this continuum. So how do I define these three kinds of people? Lurkers to me are people who are on your email list or they follow you in social media, but they don't necessarily take action. Supporters are people who take action, and advocates are people who help you spread the word. Okay? Now, a lot of times people think in crowdfunding that it's all about the crowd and it's all this mass messaging, right? And, you know, they think that their goal is to get all these random people to give it to their campaign because that's this idea that that's what crowdfunding is. You put a campaign up, it takes off on its own, you get all this press and all these people just give and you're this huge success, right? So we've already established that it takes a lot of elbow grease to get your motor running. I also would tell you that it is not a failure when you know the majority of your supporters, at least initially, or you say, well, I have had all their email addresses, so I didn't grow my database. One question that I'll often say to you is, yeah, but what percentage of people normally give to your campaigns? Right? And a lot of times they'll say 5 to 20%. Well, if in this new campaign you move the needle and you got 50% of people to give, or you got a whole bunch of lurkers to come out of the woodwork and give you money who've never taken action before, that's a huge achievement. And then your goal, right, your mission is going to be to turn those supporters into advocates. And the best way to do that will be through personal follow-up and lots of gratitude. Right. And that's, the numbers are actually astounding. And I can, if you guys want it, you can follow up with me. I've got a great link to an article by the folks at Bloomerang. They do tons of research about donor retention. And there's an awesome graphic about people, how many people return after the first campaign and then what retention is like after you give to the second campaign. And it's hugely disparate. And the main thing that impacts is really people feeling like their contribution meant something. And then they'll give again. Once you get them to give a second time, they're much more likely to stick around. So you really, as much as people think that they should be putting all this effort into just getting their campaign out, they lose sight of retention and creating advocacy. So I really want you guys to keep that in mind. I mentioned this before, you heard this nugget. Crowdfunding is a tool to work your network. So in this beginning process, you are really lining people up to donate when you want, share when you ask, give you access to influencers. We often recommend that when you're setting up a campaign, actually, to keep 2 pieces of paper next to your desk. One piece of paper, because sometimes it takes a while to think of these people, is who do you think could be part of your online street team, right? The people who will help you get the word out. And the other piece of paper is keep a list of people you think would donate early when you ask them to, or someone who might donate a large amount that you might be able to use as a donor match to generate some excitement, or someone that you know is definitely going to give and that they would do it when you want them to. Because a lot of this is actually like you're kind of manhandling some of the donors to get them to give during the soft launch, or someone's going to give $500 and you're going to say, you know what, would you just wait? I might ask you to do it in week 1. I might ask you to do it in week 2. I need something that might get people excited that I can make an announcement about. You want to think of people like that strategically. And so it might sound counterintuitive, but you actually have to plan to create virality. All right. So in your marketing plan, I see it as kind of a trifecta. Your advocates are who we call your online street team, or people that you turn from supporters into advocates, right? Or it could be your board. But these are the people who are going to help you spread the word, okay? Consistent communication, you need to be emailing until you're almost embarrassed. And that's when you know you've been emailing enough. So often people will say, we're so sort of programmed to be Debbie Downer if things don't go our way. I posted to Facebook once or twice and everyone ignored it. So that sucks. I don't know why anyone isn't giving. Well, it's because it takes about 5 to 7 times for people to be hit with your message before they take action. And you've got to also make sure that people are seeing your Facebook posts, and you got to make sure that you've got people liking and commenting and triggering the Facebook algorithm so that more people will see it. So there's like little tips like that, but you really got to be hitting them from various angles with lots of consistent communication, not just asking them for money, but introducing them to who they would be impacting, giving them an update, doing shout outs to thank people, right? Make it feel bigger and informative and like you're giving them valuable information, not just taking. And finally, the other piece of the trifecta is follow up and appreciation. And it is well worth your time to send personal email thank you notes, to follow up with someone a couple weeks later and give them an update. If you're an organization, I just got this awesome idea that I've been telling everyone about last week about at a board meeting, you can do a thankathon and you give each board member 5 names of people to call and say thank you, and even give them some exploratory questions to find out why they gave. Because you'll often find with crowdfunding actually that people come out of the woodwork who don't normally give. Like people give for different reasons, and a lot of it just has to do with what is compelling to them. And so that could be great learning for you to find out what did I do right this time so that I can replicate that. Slide 17, you're going to just check this off for yourself when you get the slides from me. This is your checklist, similar to the checklist before of, how do you set up a campaign well? This is your marketing plan checklist. Questions to ask yourself. Who's the target? What's our network potential? How am I going to work through both a mass audience and a personal audience? Ask yourself, what marketing vehicles does my audience respond well to? So, of course, your best ROI is going to be online through email and social media and text messaging. But if you know that you've got a very feet on the street audience that respond to posters and they would like take a picture of it and, deal with it later or tell people about it, or that they would respond to postcards, or you've got an organization that you're trying to change the culture of giving and move them from giving offline to online because you'll get so many viral benefits, it may be that you need to backdoor it. The cool thing, like the links that we give you guys for your campaigns, they're customized and they translate really beautifully to print. So you can do a dual effort depending on what the situation is of your organization and sort of the status of your community of donors. And then finally, make sure that you have an actual promotional calendar. So you get it. It's all about the marketing. I think we've driven that point home. What are some tactics that actually work? This chart might look really scary, but when you get the slides from me, I think this is one of those slides you could actually print out and like put up next to your desk. And it's going to give you the way I like to break down campaigns. So first of all, sometimes people say, well, what's the right length of a campaign? Our platform, we actually let you keep your campaign up as long as you like. And we really encourage you to figure out how are you going to build in that sense of urgency and how long can you maintain your campaign? There are other platforms that might tell you can only have the campaign up for 30 days or 45. The reason behind that is because people respond to urgency and deadlines. So, but you can create that for yourself. So step 1 is look at your calendar and figure out how long you want your campaign to be. I often recommend for your marketing plan, just take out PowerPoint and, one slide, each slide represents a week where you can detail what your goals are for that week. And you can kind of look at it like the pre part of your campaign could be the before, the during might be some, clutch period where you're creating a big frenzy, or if you're doing an event, the during is actually the event and sort of how do you get people to donate in that moment. And then the after is all of the follow-up. So you want to just think about what are the things that you would like to do to create your before, during, and after that will create momentum, frenzy, urgency, lots of noise. Visualize your network potential. I like to either think of it like the branches of a tree or even like a bullseye, the rings of a bullseye. And so that inner circle of key supporters is that center of the bullseye. And then what you're doing as you work through your advocates and supporters is you're trying to go from the next rung to the next rung to the next rung. And if you can convert enough supporters to be advocates, that's when you have people sharing with their network. That's when you'll start getting random people to give. So in the beginning, you're going to know your supporters, and that's fine. And that should not be a demotivator. That should be a motivator for you to get on those people and get them sharing for you. And then you start to get the word out that way. And to Sal's point, or the question that came up before, as you see in the little burst, there's an acknowledgement that you may need to spend time creating your network before you launch. It really depends where you are at and sort of that aspect of your life and your organization. But I will tell you, and I think this is basically reinforcement of something we've been saying, is that you've got to pave the way with goodwill. You can't just show up in someone's inbox and ask them to do something for you. And so if you've been doing a good job of cultivating your network already, and you've got a lot of loyal followers, then you're ready to do a campaign. If you haven't, this slide will give you some ideas that you can really study on. What can you do to build a relationship with your mass community? How can you plant seeds about the campaign that's coming? Giving people the inside scoop, making a public call for online street teamers. You might, if you decide to do something that has incentives, you might even let people vote on what the incentives are. And also manage expectations, because people are definitely worried about over emailing. And so one of my favorite strategies is actually, especially if you are an organization that has a list, and I know they're so protective about having worked so hard to build the list up that every unsubscribe hurts, Number one, just get used to it. People will unsubscribe. But I think you can manage that by, letting people know, hey, we're going to be doing our first crowdfunding campaign. You're going to be hearing from us a lot from this date to this date. We hope you are as excited about the campaign as we are. And don't worry, it will have an end date, and then, we won't bombard you so much. But the reason we're doing this is because we really need to raise enough money for 30 scholarships, or we really need to build our new science lab by September. This mission is important. We hope you'll join us, right? So sometimes people are afraid of being transparent and sharing what's really going on. But I find that when you are honest and positioned well, you can engage people on the journey and they're more likely to help you. Okay? Tip the scales in your favor. I've said this before, I will repeat it. These things don't take off by magic. You actually have to ask people to do certain things before you start. If you're in an organization, asking 1 or 2 or 3 people to do a match is an awesome way to get people super fired up. And you can do little frenzies, right? That whole idea of creating sense of urgency. So you say, we've got a donor who said they would give us $2,400 if we could raise $2,400 in 24 hours. We just need this many donors to give $24 each and we'll be there. Like, do alliterative kind of fun things, but try and have stuff ready in advance to deploy, because I will tell you that once the campaign starts going, and I have like one person in my mind who they did a match, was so successful. We sent them a note and we were like, do another one. This is awesome. And she's like, I don't have time to ask anyone else. I'm so busy sending thank you notes and doing social media posts. And she's like, I wish I would have had another. You can always keep that person in your back pocket and not use it. But if you don't have it, then you, like I said before, that idea of creating success and leveraging success, like planning to be successful, that's what I meant by that. That's a good illustration of being ready. And I want you to think about fundraising like call and response. So just because you've posted once and then you're wondering, well, why isn't anyone giving 2 days later? It's because you're gone in their mind, right? You've got to stay present. And the way to do that is to look for excuses to get in front of people. And your excuse cannot be, give me money, give me money. It's got to be an update, a show of thanks, letting your community know that you are X amount shy of being at the 60% mark. Who's going to push you over? Come up with senses of urgency, create a deadline, create a contest, do a matching incentive. The tag and thank method, if you don't know what that is amazing on Facebook and Twitter and probably some other social media platforms, because if you tag all these people and thank them for giving, it shows up in their news feeds, and it creates subtle social pressure so that their friends want to give. And so that's the type of viral momentum you want to create. This slide is really just meant to show you what it looks like to create an integrated marketing plan, right? And that's what I was talking about before. Think about what your community will respond well to. Your best ROI is online, so of course you need to do email and social media, but then what else? This woman was really good at this, and she knew that her community, well, it's a tight community, so she got press in like local publications. She also knew that it was a very feet on the street kind of community, and so she did posters, and that worked really well for her. So you want to think about all the different ways that you can connect with your audience. Plan for success. What do I mean by that? So what I did is I prepared some if-then strategies for you guys so you could start to think this through, right? 2 years ago on Giving Tuesday, we got a phone call from a nonprofit that they were, it was halfway through the day, right? Giving Tuesday is a 24-hour period. And they said, we already hit our goal and it's 3 o'clock. What do we do? And I was like, keep going, double down, raise your thermometer, send out a communication, thank everyone for being so awesome, for getting you there so quickly. And you were able to help, 100 people by 3 o'clock. Well, we're challenging you to help another 100 by midnight. Go. Okay? If donors get you to certain milestones, tag and thank, show appreciation, let people see who's helping you and what they're doing that's making a difference so that they can do it too. If you are on the brink of hitting a round number, people love pushing you over silly numbers. It's all like mind games. So put it out there. That's the whole idea of call and response. People can't give if they don't know that you need. So you got to be open. If you meet a donor match, like I said with that other example, make sure you've got a second one ready. And when you successfully complete your campaign, have a celebration message ready to go that you can deploy. And I will tell you, if you don't hit your goal, I see a lot of people kind of like sneaking off and they don't want to keep communicating, and I wouldn't do that. I think you can still celebrate the success you have, or maybe you reevaluate your timeline and you make a special announcement of, guess what, we're extending our campaign by an extra week, and here's what we've got to keep you motivated, right? So be flexible. So how do I get people to promote my campaign? You're going to identify key advocates and ask them to be part of your online street team. Think about who you know who has influence. Think about those people that we all know, those people who are the ones that everybody listens to, and you want some of those on your side. Someone who might have a lot of Twitter followers, ask them if they could get their friend, with 20,000 followers to tweet for you. The main thing is you don't want to be this guy. You don't want to be a one-man band. You need to think of yourself like the conductor of the orchestra, and then you are, motivating all of your different musicians to help you push the campaign out, and you're giving them tools to do it, like blurbs, like email scripts, etc. You need to plan for a soft launch. Statistically speaking, if you don't get your thermometer up 20 or 30% before you go public, you're not going to hit your goal. And so you want to think of those strategies to make a lot of personal requests of people to give before you go public. It makes a huge difference. Make sure that you create messaging that people can't ignore. So people often get caught up in the crowd of crowdfunding and think it's only just mass messaging that they're pushing out there. You need to have a combination of mass messaging and a lot of personal messaging. An email written directly to Dana or to Sal is a lot harder for me to push delete on than one that's just constantly mass. And having that appreciation strategy, I cannot encourage you enough to put people in the mood to give with gratitude. Make sure that you've got tools. This is an example of how you could create like a marketing toolkit for yourself. And actually, at Deposit a Gift, for anyone who's running a campaign with us, we have toolkits like this for you with marketing tips, marketing plans, pre-written scripts. You want to have this stuff in advance so that it makes it really easy when your campaign starts to take off, that you can keep the momentum up. A lot of people aren't so good at creating systems, and I would say that when you're running a campaign, because it really can take on a life of its own, it's important that you for example, request a meeting with yourself once a day from 11 to 12 is crowdfunding hour. And that's when you sit down and actually assess your campaign, send thank you notes, send emails, schedule social media posts. And it could be helpful if you create a checklist for a typical day that you can constantly refer to, so that every time you sit down, you're not reinventing the wheel. This probably doesn't come as a surprise, but it's much easier to share when you have an email list. Some of you probably already have a MailChimp or Constant Contact. If you don't, before you do something like this, MailChimp's a cool tool because you can have up to 2,000 emails in your account for free. And this way you can keep adding new donors to it. People can opt out. It's very simple, and it's easy for you to know who you've already emailed. And then finally, will strangers give to your campaign? I've already addressed this, but just to remind you, it's possible that they will, that it shouldn't be your focus. And you really want to focus on sucking the juice out of the people that you already have access to, and getting, if you only have 10% of people who normally give, make a goal of getting yourself to 25% and focus on those people, and then focus on getting them to share with their friends. And finally,
can I just add one thing there?
Yeah.
Can I just add one thing there too? I think the goal should not be getting either strangers to pledge. It should be turning strangers into friends. That's really the goal. That's really where you develop that relationship. The stranger then moves from someone I don't know to someone who maybe I haven't met physically in person, but who might care about me, or they have a friend who has a friend that knows me, and that developing that relationship.
Absolutely.
I just want to add that there.
Yeah, no, and I think that is a different take on this idea of turning supporters into advocates and friends. Like actually taking the time to notice, oh, I don't know that person. Send them a personal email. Hey, how cool of you that you just supported
friends.
Yeah, I'd love to know you. What brought you to my campaign? I mean, I think people who do well at this have an innate curiosity and interest in networking and being friendly. If that doesn't necessarily come naturally to you, not that you're not a nice person, but networking's not your thing, that would be a personal goal. That'd be something to work on, because it's what makes these things do well.
Very true. We also have some great, before we get to the next session, I just want to highlight, we have some really great questions in the chat. Also some about your platform as well, how it differs from other platforms out there, how you're really going to communicate this fee that's going to go to the platform, and that doesn't factor into the overall fundraising raise. Maybe we could answer 3 questions from the crowd here before we move in, because that was a lot of information that you just gave, a lot of really great information too. Like, you guys, we are going to be giving you a copy of these slides. This is like a checklist. This is amazing, the amount of material that you've brought thus far. I myself, my head is swimming in like so many different ideas and ways to promote a campaign. So a lot of great material. Thank you so much, Dana. But
You're welcome.
I want to give you a second just to look at some of these questions. The one other thing I wanted to say is that the one theme I'm seeing here among all of these slides is that this is about emotions and relationships. It's about developing the emotion of gratitude. If someone doesn't feel like you don't feel grateful, then they're going to feel turned off. It's really about understanding the people that are giving to your campaign in emotional context. Or if someone feels like, wow, that's so cool, that's the emotion of surprise that you're trying to create in someone. Or, wow, that's a really important cause. You're creating that emotion in someone. That's a theme that just has run through these slides that really I picked up on. So that's just something I wanted to point out.
That's great. No, and I'm at the last slide after this, guys, and you'll just get it in the follow-up, is just different example campaigns. So I'll leave it here. And then how about I do this? Well, I'm happy to stay on for a couple extra minutes. And Sal, do you want me to answer about my platform? And while we do that, why don't you go through the questions in the chat and you pick the ones that you want answered? Does that sound good?
Definitely. Well, the first one, I think people are naturally curious about your platform, and I also I'd love for them to learn a little bit more. So how does Deposit a Gift differ from some of these other platforms? And I do think one clear way is just the amount of education you're putting out there, amount of hand-holding that you have with the process.
Yeah, that's a big part of it, is that we offer really high touch customer service. it's frustrating to me to see campaigns not hit their goals. And, there's something to be said. By its very nature, crowdfunding is DIY, right? It's do it yourself. But we want to make sure that you can do it yourself well. And so our customer service team is very human, very accessible. We'll look at your campaign. We'll actually give you feedback. I don't think you'll get that anywhere else. We'll give you feedback on your campaign. And then we've got a ton of tutorials and toolkits and pre-written scripts and stuff to really help teach you how to market your campaign. So we don't do it for you. No platform does. We're more hands-on, but I have learned that if we get too involved, I find that because we've experimented different approaches, that we take away your initiative. So it really is important that you feel ownership. And so what we're trying to do is give you the tools to be able to drive your campaign. Another
How
important...
I was going to say, how then should the donor, how should someone communicate that there is going to be this fee involved with the platform? Because that's something that I think,
somebody asked
is something that might not someone realize.
Honestly, nobody really does. I'm just telling you the honesty. So we have a fee, as every platform does. Another point of distinction is our fees are actually less. So most other platforms, the fees are from 8.5% to 12.5%, and ours are 5.5% to 7.5%. And I'm going to be giving you all a code. I'll even put it in right now. We're giving you a free upgrade to our platform that puts you on the 6.5% fee. So most people pay $149 for that, and we're giving it to you guys for free. It expires next week on 4/21. So if you're thinking of doing a campaign, creating an account is free, and then you can just get to step 2 of setup and enter the code, and you'll secure it, and you can do your campaign 6 months from now. It doesn't matter. You'll still benefit from the fee. So our fees are lower. I would tell you, it's kind of like when you donate to the Red Cross. The Red Cross doesn't say, thank you for your $10, $6.50 just went to overhead. Like, everybody knows that there's a cost to doing business. So it's a deterrent.
It's not something that comes up, it seems, as much.
Nobody writes that on their campaign. And in a sense, it's kind of like when you were addressing how do you tell the story. You're not going to lie. You want to position it right. So you think about, what are the things that are going to motivate people and what aren't? If you tell them, oh, there's a fee, it's not going to motivate people to give in that way. And frankly, the fee is so small compared to what you should be getting out of this from a viral pass-along rate. That's why I said crowdfunding is marketing plus processing. So the processing is it's a cash register. And so you could use PayPal, and PayPal's cheaper. But PayPal has no viral pass-along rate. There's no story. There's nothing engaging. And the idea is that you want to create something that's going to go faster to help you reach more people, raise more money, raise your profile. And so that's what you're paying for. But yeah, people don't really put it on the site.
That's a really good point. Ed from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. What information about donors does a typical campaign get? The email address, the telephone number, what kind of stuff can you get from the donors that you can use later?
Sure. So it's actually everything that's on our checkout page. So actually, when I send you guys a follow-up in email, I'm going to give you links to a bunch of campaigns, and you could just pretend like you're donating to one. You don't have to process your credit card. Just enter, $1 and hit add to cart. And then you'll see the checkout page. We give you all the donor data because we realize that's what you're doing this for. So name, address, email, how much they gave, if they gave to a particular bucket or whatever it is, what they gave. The only piece of information that we collect that we don't pass along is the phone number. And we only collect that in case we have to call because there's some issue or urgency or whatever. But you get all of that. And on our platform, you can actually have access to that donor data from the get-go. There are other sites that don't let you get your donor data until it's over. There are other sites that don't let you cash out until it's over. So as a point of distinction also for us, you can cash out your money along the way. You can get your donor data along the way.
Very cool. David from Hagerstown, Maryland. It's a cool name. We have a robust Facebook network, 2,500 likes. And on Twitter, we have 11,000 people following us. Can you recommend any other social media platforms to develop a crowdfunding network? What are your thoughts on that? I can also add my thoughts as well.
I mean, one
On
thing
that.
he didn't say, and maybe it's David, I think if he could add to it what kind of organization he's from, because a lot of times, like, who you are would dictate what community you should be a part of. So for example, if you're a nonprofit that has to do with, let's say, like children and animals, Instagram could be a really good one because you can do lots of cute visuals if you have permission to use the photos. There are other organizations that's not going to work well for. For lots of nonprofits, LinkedIn is great for making connections with other like-minded professionals because there are just so many LinkedIn groups where people are talking about topics. What do you think?
Okay. Guys, don't get caught up in numbers as well. We see numbers and we just think like, wow, that person has 1 million likes on Facebook. Look at engagement. What is the engagement rate of your followers? And really try to up that. I think more than trying to acquire more followers is going to have a bigger bang for your buck. Because at the end of the day, it's responsiveness. How many people will take action on a message you send out? How many people will check out something, a link, based on posting it? It's engagement that really is the golden bullet, if you will. Keith, he asked a question: how many clients of yours are bootstrapping their campaigns? I'm not exactly what you mean by bootstrapping. Do you mean how many people are launching campaigns on Deposit a Gift that aren't established big nonprofits? Maybe you could give us an idea of how many people are newbies to crowdfunding that are launching on Deposit a Gift versus some of these more established nonprofits.
Sure.
However you interpret that question.
Okay. And one thing, a few people have been asking about getting the slides and the recording. So just as a reminder, I will be sending that out by tomorrow. It's going to come from Dana at depositagift.com, my email. So if you don't see it in your inbox, check your spam folder. I would say the majority of people are newbies to crowdfunding. I mean, when you're in the industry like Sal and I are, it might feel like a crowded industry that's, there's so much going on, but the majority of people don't know what it is and how it works. I kind of liken it, especially in the nonprofit world, to like where peer-to-peer was 5 years ago, where it's this buzzword and people know about it and they think it's something they should be doing, but, they don't really know how to do it, which is why so many people are interested in these workshops. But I can't really tell you an exact breakdown, but I can tell you that the majority of people, unless they're like repeat people using us again and again, which we have lots of those too, it's typically their first campaign. So the cool thing is that, it's an art, not a science, and it's about experimentation, and it's about taking the basic tenets that we've been talking about today and applying them to your specific situation. And actually, that brings me to this slide, which is really the final one before we can just, flip through some examples, which is that every campaign leads to the next, right? So I love this organization. They're actually a pretty established organization, but totally new to this. And their first campaign raised, close to $2,500, which is not bad or anything. That was Giving Tuesday 2014. And then this campaign on the right was a walk that they did in, I think, September 2015. 9 months later, and you guys can see the dramatic difference in how much they were able to raise. And I think it speaks to a few things. One is the investment in cultivating their community during those 9 months, right? And that's what we've been talking about, building that emotional connection, giving to your community, not just asking for them to donate, and also training people. So, a key to building that relationship is consistent communication. So come up with something that's doable for you, but that your community can count on, whether it's an e-newsletter a quarter, a month, every other week, whatever it might be. Get people used to hearing from you, getting them trained to take action on your messaging in the way that you want them to, and it will really change the way that people interact. And just also, as Sal said, this has been a ton of information, and I said that up front. I wanted you to know you're going to get everything you need to be able to do this well, even if you've got to watch the webinar 5 times. But take some pressure off. Know that you have the information that you need. I gave you a poo-poo platter of like every best practice, and now pick 2 or 3 things that you can do, right? And just look at it as like one foot in front of the other, baby steps. Set yourself up with metrics for success so that then you can, kind of like a dartboard at the end of the campaign, you can go like, okay, we did this, this worked, this didn't, right? And then you apply that to your next campaign, you try again, mix it up, but always, it doesn't matter what you're doing, having an emotional connection and personal communication with your community is going to make a huge difference. Sal, anything else you want to do? I'm just going to flip the slides while you talk and ask any other questions.
Oh yeah, sure.
Answer.
Well, first of all, I think that was amazing. 2,400, a little over 2,400 to 800,000. That is a ridiculous level of success there that company, that organization had on your platform. And if you think about it, we tend to look at things we're doing every day, maybe forming new connections, building up our social profiles, and we don't put a number on those results. Like, how much would it actually mean to your organization, to you, your project, if you were able to do a campaign on that level? Like, that's what I think we're all building towards. Is it's not necessarily a one-time event. It's this building towards the ability to execute on this level. It's just, that to me is crazy. It's an amazing amount of success. I think that's really, really cool. And to see more and more campaigns do this also, I think it also just is an indication that more and more people are picking up on the behavior of crowdfunding. More and more people are becoming familiar with online giving, giving donations online, which is, I think it's a really strong cultural shift, and something that we're going to see much more into the future as well. So that's very cool. Well, you guys, this is the end of the webinar. I'd love it. We're probably going to stick around for like 4 or 5 minutes, answering any questions if you have any. Dana, I think, will also stay here for a few minutes. But thank you guys so much for attending this webinar. I did my last one around this time last year on personal crowdfunding, and this one was more geared towards nonprofit crowdfunding. But I hope you got something out of it. I really hope that this information is in some way going to transform your campaign, maybe the future trajectory of your organization, or even your life. Remember that we're still in the very early stages of online giving and crowdfunding. And if you learn how to actually operate in this marketplace, the gains you're going to see down the road are just phenomenal. Just think of all of this as a learning process. What you learn with regards to social media, marketing, building up your donor list, you're going to be able to apply to your organization years from now. You guys are ahead. You're like the cream of the crop here, the 1% of people who are learning about this whole new topic, because so many other organizations out there are operating from the old school, sending out letters, physically via mail to try and get donations, or just operating in such ways that are archaic. So thank you for tuning into the webinar. We really, really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Sal, thanks for having me. We love being able to share information and help all new groups of people be able to crowdfund well. My email is here. I also, put the code in there a couple times, and when I send you the email, CrowdCruck16, and you get a free upgrade. Happy to answer your questions. Me and our support team are standing by. If you guys decide to do a campaign, we are happy to answer any questions. We'll give you a cheat sheet to make setup really easy, and tons of marketing toolkits. So you're welcome to ping me with questions, but I'm also, with volume and everything, I'm going to connect you with our support team and make sure that they know that you're a VIP, right? Because a lot of people just come through our homepage. We don't necessarily know who they are, but if you come through me, or if you even write directly to support@depositagift.com and say, I was on Dana's webinar with Sal, you will definitely get the royal treatment there. So, Sal, any other questions that you want answered, or should we go and we'll do the follow-up and then people can just ping us independently?
I was looking at, I was looking through some of the questions. I think it actually would just be best if people can send, follow-up emails that way. A lot of these questions seem like people that are just more interested in your platform and learning a bit more, maybe about your ticketing system, all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
So I think that would be the best way.
Okay, fantastic. All right, well then what we're going to do is we're going to end the webinar. I will say It's free, but we would love your feedback. If you don't mind giving us
Yes,
1 minute of your
feedback
time.
would be awesome, guys.
So as soon as I click to end the meeting, what's going to happen, you're going to get triggered with a survey. It's like 2 questions. So please, if you don't mind sticking around, letting us know what you thought. It helps me and Sal, because if you like this, and maybe next time we do another that's for like a town hall, no slides, and we just chat with you, that could be something else really fun. So if there's anything else that you want, this is a great forum to let us know, and we'll be happy to think about it.
Definitely. We'll see you guys later. I'm sure I'll see you on a podcast episode or a YouTube video or one of my blog articles. So thank you for reading those, listening to those, watching those also. I really enjoyed this webinar. Dana brought some great content. And if you did that survey for us, it would mean the world to us. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Al. Thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, guys.